Hey guys, how's it going? It's Baggins here, and today I wanted to provide you guys with another update video for my builds in New World post Heart of Madness or Blunderbuss patch. Now, as usual, this video will be focused on life staff and healing in particular, as opposed to DPS or tanking builds. But if you guys would like to see some other builds here on the channel, I have taken the time to flesh out almost all of my other weapons and pick up quite a few pieces of gear for them. So if you guys are interested in any tanking builds or mage builds, maybe even the new Blunderbuss weapon, let me know in the comments down below, or hop in on the stream and ask me for my opinions. I'll put a link to the stream in the description down below. But for today's video, I thought we'd split it into two parts. The first part of the video being light armor healing builds, and the second part of the video being heavy armor healing builds. Now, some of you may be asking, well, what about the medium armor healing builds, Baggins? Right now, I feel like medium armor is not really in a good spot. The prevalence of hearty rings, this particular perk here, which gives you more stamina, allows you to get 3 dodge rolls in both light and heavy, when previously, when we were making videos in 2021, Hearty wasn't that common on rings, and therefore there was a big advantage to going medium in that you could get 3 dodges. But now that you can get 3 dodges in all different equipment loads, and by the way, when I do say light and heavy, I'm determining by this equipment load here, so you can actually get away with wearing a medium chest piece. We're not all wearing light armor, but that's what I mean there, to clarify. But yeah, it just turns out medium armor not really in the best spot right now, so I'd recommend you either go for light or heavy. If you're interested in light armor healing builds, this is the video for that one. If you want to see some heavy armor healing builds, a bit more like paladin kind of builds, I'll put a link to that up in the top right and also in the description down below. So for my first light armor healing build, this is going to cover the PvP side of things. So if you guys are interested in wars or outpost rush or even open world PvP, if you can find some, this is a build that I recommend for that. And if you're interested in healing expeditions or doing invasions or any other form of PvE content fighting the AI, that will be later on in the video, and you'll be able to scrub along to find that. So let's start off with the mastery and the weapon choice. In my opinion, one of the best things you can pair with life staff when it comes for light armor PvP healing is the rapier, and that's because it gives you a lot of escape and a lot of ways to stay away from enemies, which is something you're going to be wanting to do if you're in light armor, as you are more susceptible to dying, as it gives you a significantly less armor rating, as you can see down here, than you would get in heavy armor. So you don't really want to be taking damage if you can avoid it, and one of the best weapons for avoiding damage turns out to be the rapier with the abilities that we have here. So looking at the skill tree exactly for it, we've decided to take everything on the right side for all of the evasive tools. So we've got riposte, so we can reflect and stun. Great axes coming at us. We've got the evade, just to give us a little bit of a speed boost, and it also gives us some stamina back when we use the evade. And then we have the flesh for a cheeky dash away as well. So if you pair all of these abilities and use them at the right time, you can make yourself very slippery and very hard to lock down. And then other things that we've taken on the skill tree are basically there just to facilitate cooldown reduction, so we can use our abilities more often, and anything that gives us a speed boost as well. One thing that I do want to bear in mind for this video and most of my healing build videos, this is not a damage build. You don't use the rapier for damage, you just use it for its utility and for its escape. So even though we do have an amber gem in the rapier, it's not really there to be, you know, doing left click. You want to just be using this to drop the abilities and then switch back to the life staff. Now, speaking of the life staff, the abilities that I would recommend you rock as like a default build are currently on the screen here. So we have Sacred Ground. This is just like one of the best heals in the game, and you're going to run this in almost every single healing build. Then you have Light's Embrace, one of the best single target heals in the game. Very, very strong. And then finally we have Beacon. This can be swapped out for Arbor Protection if you're feeling that Beacon doesn't do enough for you, or it's not right in the build. I think Arbor Protection fully maxed out with the perk on your armor is very, very good, and we'll get to armor perks in a second. I do like to take the Speed of Light on the Beacon just for a little bit more evasiveness. Also helps my team sort of engage or disengage if they're in trouble. One other thing that you can choose to take is Enchanted Justice or Mending Touch. You'll need to get either one of these to be able to unlock Divine Blessing. I've gone for Enchanted Justice, as I think Mending Touch is a little bit difficult to pull off in PvP scenarios, and this just gives us a little bit more survivability. It's a pretty awful ability, but it's something there just to potentially save you in some scenarios. Now moving on to my gear, my armor, this is the helmet that we're rocking. This is one of the new pieces of gear that drops from Tempest Heart. There's actually a few pieces that we have from Tempest Heart and still some pieces that we're looking to farm out. So if you guys haven't been to the new expedition yet and you're looking to get some good pieces of healer armor, I highly recommend you check out Tempest Heart. We'll put a link to New World Database in the description down below so you can look at where all of these items drop from in particular bosses. But yeah, this is the helmet of choice that I've gone with. It has Elemental Aversion, Refreshing, and Fortifying Sacred Ground. The most important perk that we have on this piece of gear is the Fortifying Sacred Ground. You don't need multiple pieces of Fortifying Sacred Ground. They do not stack. That's sometimes a question that comes up, but getting one of them, very, very important. Elemental Aversion is going to help us take a little bit less damage from those mages, the fireballs, and the ice gauntlets, and refreshing just there to allow us to heal more often. Moving on to the chest piece, this is just a filler piece, but it's also very, very good. It's got Resilient and Freedom. If this was Legendary, the third perk that I would choose to put in it is either Refreshing or Refreshing Evasion, but Resilient and Freedom, two very, very, very good perks to get in PvP. You want to look to get at least two of these, 2 Resilient and 2 Freedom on your armor, although ideally 3 or more. The gloves are a work in progress. These I'm going to be replacing with the Sagacious gloves from the same dungeon that we talked about earlier. If I switch over my screen here, you can see the Sagacious gloves. They've got Shirking Fortification, Refreshing, and Elemental Aversion. Shirking Fortification, I think, is a very interesting perk. I'm looking to make some builds where we can stack this up. But Refreshing and Elemental Aversion, as we mentioned previously on the helmet, these are 2 perks that help us heal more and also stay alive in certain scenarios as well. The legs here, you're starting to see a pattern. They are the Sagacious pants, again, from Tempest Heart. They have Shirking Energy, Refreshing, and Mending Protection. If you are going to be using Orb of Protection, I highly, highly, highly recommend you pick up Mending Protection, as it makes the heal much stronger. If you heal somebody under 50% health, you get a big increase to your outgoing healing for 3 seconds, but every time that it ticks, every time it heals somebody under 50%, you get to refresh that healing power increase, and it makes your heals noticeably stronger. And then on top of that, the Shirking Energy perk, again, like with Fortifying Sacred Ground, to my understanding, you only need 1 of these, but having 1 is very important, as every 6 seconds, if you dodge through an arrow or a bullet that's being shot at you or a great axe being swung, you'll get like half of the dodges stamina refunded, which is pretty nice for staying alive. The more dodges you can do, the less likely it is you're going to die, and that's just going to mean you're a more effective healer. Finally, moving on to the legs, we have Resilient and Accelerating Light's Embrace. Now, Accelerating Light's Embrace I don't think is a must-have perk, but it is pretty good if you're going to run the ability. You can use it on yourself to give yourself a little bit of a speed boost, or a teammate. One thing that you do have to bear in mind is it says if it's used on a target below full health, so it does have to heal them. You can't pop it on somebody who is full health and get the speed boost. But if they are below and you pop it on them, it's going to help them engage into the enemy or disengage, or potentially help yourself run away as well. So I think a good one to pick up. It's going to be very good when PvP arenas come out, the 3v3 arenas. And of course, Resilient is there as it's one of the S tier perks. You're going to find that a lot of people run keen on their weapons, and especially with bows and muskets, they are going to crit you very, very hard. So if you can flatten that curve, that critical damage a little bit down, makes your healing more manageable and makes you less likely to die in a quick burst. Same reason with Freedom. We didn't really go over it, but it allows you to get out of stuns, ice showers, gravity wells, and stuff faster, so you can start dodging and again be less likely to die. Now, going over to the jewelry, this is going to be the same across both PvP and PvE healing builds, but we have a Divine, Fortified, and Health Amulet. I think these 3 perks are very, very strong. Maybe the Divine isn't needed as much in light armor, but the Fortified does help increase the Fortifying Sacred Ground duration. It also helps increase the Fortify that you get from the Protector's Touch, and it also helps increase the Fortify that you get from Orb of Protection, of course. So some nice synergy there with some heals that we have, but not entirely needed. The most important thing that I think you can get on your amulet is health. Those of you who are looking for an alternative amulet that's not quite as insane, because getting a crafted one like that is going to set you back several 100,000 gold, or you just have to be very, very lucky. But another amulet that you guys can look to farm out in terms of a drop is the Keeper's Pendant, and this drops from Mutated Dynasty Shipyard. So if it's a Mutated Dynasty, you want to get in there and spam it a bit, as it's got some pretty good perks on it as well. Moving over to the ring, the most important thing that you want to get in the ring is the Hearty, as we previously mentioned, and then Sacred for the outgoing healing. And then finally, the third perk, kind of up to you. Refreshing or Refreshing Evasion will be a good choice. I have Leeching on mine. It's got some synergy when I'm using like Void Blade and stuff, and it helps me keep alive, you know, a little bit more with when we're spamming light attacks. But again, Refreshing or Refreshing Evasion would be the ideal there. But Hearty, something you absolutely want to get. And then Sacred is the second best perk there as well. Finally, moving on to the earring. In my opinion, this is a best in slot earring. It doesn't really get much better than this. It's Healthy Toast, Refreshing, and Refreshing Toast. I think Healthy Toast really, really helps in PvP, as it basically gives you an extra health potion. Your mana potions become like pseudo health potions, as well as whenever you drink a mana potion, you gain 9.7% of your max health. And of course, another reason to get health on the amulet, so you have a bigger pool. And if you stack a good amount of Constitution, then you'll also be able to take bigger advantage of that. Refreshing Toast means we can use potions more often, and Refreshing again for the healing uptime. Finally, moving on to the Rapier and the Life Staff. The Rapier doesn't really matter. If you can, I would get Sundering Riposte as a perk on it, as it just makes the riposte a little bit better. But the most important thing is that it has Focus, or it has Constitution, or it has Constitution and Focus. And that's basically it. It is effectively just a stat stick with the abilities, so don't really get too hung up on how good the rapier is. However, a good life staff is very important, and one of the best life staffs in the game, in my opinion, is the Will of the Ancients. This drops from Lazarus Instrumentality, so make sure you go in there and farm out this life staff if you haven't already got it. It's the best life staff. Finally, moving over to my stats for this light armor PvP healing build, you have two choices in my opinion. The more risky one is you can go for 150 constitution and then as much focus as you can get, or you can take a few points out of focus here and instead go to 200 constitution, and then you probably want to eat some focus food to, again, get yourself as close to that 300 or above 300 focus as you can. The 300 focus perk isn't particularly important, but just having a bigger focus number obviously means your heals are going to be bigger, which means you're going to be more effective on the battlefield. So 200 constitution, 300 focus, or you could look to go for 150 constitution and 350 focus, again, if you're eating food to take a bigger advantage of those heals. Alright, so now moving over to light armor healing for PvE. We're talking about expeditions, elite boss arenas, invasions, and stuff like that. My particular light armor that we went for is kind of unique in that we've gone for a full set of Corrupted Ward. As generally, I wouldn't recommend going into mutated expeditions in light armor. You are going to get blown up very, very fast unless you have something special in hand to deal with them. And my sort of something special that we've gone for is the Corrupted Ward. So when we do mutated Dynasty Shipyard or hopefully mutated Tempest Heart in the near future, this Corrupted Ward actually saves you a lot of damage, as we have it on 4 different pieces right now. So I've got it my helmet, my chest, my gloves, and my boots. And each piece is almost providing us 5% corruption damage absorption so 5 times 4, quick math, that is 20% extra damage absorption against the corrupted, which basically is equivalent to us wearing heavy armor when we're doing specifically corrupted content. So something to bear in mind. I don't think it's entirely necessary, but if you do want to stop yourself from getting blown up, because I do think that will happen more frequently in light armor when you're doing expeditions, then look into potentially invested in some ward gear, and especially corrupted ward, as I think the 2 most challenging expeditions right now, Dynasty Shipyard and Tempest Heart. But breaking down the exact armor pieces, we've got Refreshing Evasion, Corrupted Ward, and Invigorated. Invigorated is kind of like a pretty meh perk, but this came from a helmet that dropped in mutated Dynasty Shipyard. The same with this chest piece here as well. Ideally, this would want to be the 3 perks that I'd want to see on the helmet. So we've got Corrupted Ward, Physical Aversion, and Refreshing Evasion. Physical Aversion is going to help if we pull aggro of the archers or musket users, which happens fairly frequently when you're in dungeons. Sometimes the tank struggles to get aggro or threat on the archers, and they're going to start shooting at you, but Physical Aversion will help in that scenario very much so. The gloves, just like the helmet, drop from the final boss of Mutated Dynasty Shipyard, and they have Refreshing Evasion, Corrupted Ward, and Invigorated. The legs, we had to mix it up a little bit here, but they end up still being pretty good. We needed something with Fortifying Sacred Ground on, and I found it on this crafted pair of legs I bought off of the trading post. They have Elemental Aversion, Refreshing, and Fortifying Sacred Ground. So again, Elemental Aversion helps with those a few mage encounters you have in expeditions, and then Refreshing for the uptime on the heals, and Fortifying Sacred Ground because it is a very, very good perk. Finally, we've got Mending Protection again, Corrupted Ward, and Freedom. I think Freedom is not necessarily one of the best perks in PvE, as there's not too many bosses that are going to stun you. Generally, the stuns and the silences and the slows go on the tank. But it might save you in a few pinches, and again, the Corrupted Ward, very good for absorbing that damage and Mending Protection there to make the Orb of Protection that much better. The jewelry, as we previously mentioned in the PvP side of things, is the same in PvE. I don't use different sets of jewelry for PvP and PvE. One thing that I am experimenting with or wanting to do in the near future is get an earring with the Evasive perk on it, and that, to clarify, is this perk here in the middle. So reduce the generation of threat by 50% for 5 seconds after performing a dodge. Now, I'm still not entirely sure how good this is, but this does look like a pretty juicy earring here. Unfortunately, it's gone for 57,000 gold, and we don't quite have enough to try that out. But if you are looking to go full PvE Andy, maybe investing in an evasive earring is a pretty good idea. Again, with the ring and the amulet, we keep those the same, but as we previously mentioned in the PvP build, 2 pieces of gear that you could look to get come from Garden of Genesis, and that is the Misty Kismet earring. So if we just go ahead and show you guys that one here, this is particularly good for keeping your heal cooldowns like always available, as it's got Refreshing twice on it, Refreshing Evasion and Refreshing. So you could look to get this as a drop from Garden of Genesis if you don't want to go and, break the bank on an expensive earring. Moving over to the weapons, we have a Void Gauntlet and a Life Staff. I think Void Gauntlet is one of the best weapons you can use in PvE healing scenarios, as it just provides a ton of extra utility. If we actually take a look at the abilities before we look at the Void Gauntlet in particular, like its stats, this is is the build that I run with the Void Gauntlet in most PvE or expeditions, as it provides a lot of extra healing for our team with the Orb of Decay. This is a healing ability that actually heals fairly similar to Beacon when it passes through you like so. You get a heal over time, and you can also detonate it at the end to also get a big burst of healing as well. So yeah, Orb of Decay, you can really take advantage of Blessed on your Void Gauntlet. And then Essence Rupture, another little extra bit of healing that you can add to your kit here. If you fire the Essence Rupture onto like a boss target or something like that, whenever your team attack the target, they get healed for 20% of the damage done, and then when it expires, it does another big heal as well. And finally, we got Oblivion. This is a very, very powerful ability. It provides 20% extra damage for your team for 6 seconds. And also, if you are running the Nullifying Oblivion perk, which I don't currently have on my gear, but if you are going to run it, it has some fringe use in PvE, especially in Garden of Genesis. You can remove the Fortify buff that the soldier mobs apply to themselves. The Glimpse of the Void ultimate is not really necessary. It's sometimes you'll be able to like hit a big pack of mobs with the Orb of Decay, and then you can do a heavy attack and then do another Orb of Decay for some, you know, big heals and also some big damage. But most of the time, this is just not really going to come in relevant. We generally just want to be, you know, doing our heals and stuff, switching to the Void Gauntlet to throw out some buffs and debuffs, and then switching back to the life staff again to keep on doing our stuff. So yeah, the Void Gauntlet is, again, like with the Rapier, just there for the utility. No, we're not really using it for the damage, but sometimes you may be able to activate the Glimpse of the Void. All of the passives that we've taken are just here to enable us to get cooldown reduction, so we can, again, use the abilities more frequently. And also we have a few things here to keep ourselves alive, like Efficient Harvest, not really reducing our health as much, and also Mending Evasion, allowing us to get a little bit of a heal when we dodge every 20 seconds. Last thing I want to mention with Void Gauntlet synergy, and one of the reasons why we were in the Void Gauntlet, is because it has a excellent ability to restore mana to you. So you're going to find fairly frequently you will run out of mana. You know, we just use all of our abilities then we're straight out of mana. But if you press right mouse button, you can actually turn health into mana, and then you can see, because we're standing in our heals, we just restore our health immediately as well. So some really nice utility there from the Void Gauntlet. No other weapon currently provides that in the game. So just mana on demand. Obviously, you can just drink a mana potion as well, and that will take advantage of the healthy toast that you have on your earring. But if you want to be economical and not just be knocking back infused mana potions all the time, then I would recommend the Void Gauntlet again, for all the other abilities and the ability to get mana on demand. Finally, looking at the Void Gauntlet itself in terms of its stats, we've got a 31 focus, Nullifying Oblivion, Blessed, and Mortal Siphoning. Blessed, I think, is one of the most important things you can get in the Void Gauntlet, as it does increase the heals of the Void Gauntlet specifically. People often ask me, does Blessed increase my healing on the Life Staff? No. The Life Staff is only affected by the Blessed on the Life Staff. However, as we've mentioned, there is quite a few healing abilities you can get with the Void Gauntlet, and increasing that healing by 21%, you know, it's good. It allows you to heal more, which is your role in the group. The other two perks I have in this Void Gauntlet are Nullifying Oblivion and Mortal Siphoning. Nullifying Oblivion is pretty handy in some situations, but it's not like a must-have perk. Another Void Gauntlet that I think you could look to farm out is Dark Vengeance. Some people call this best in slot. I'm not entirely convinced that it is really that amazing, as Refreshing Move and Lifestealing aren't that useful to a healer, but I believe this comes from various elite chests around Merkgard and stuff, so if you just want to do some chest runs, maybe you'll find yourself with a Dark Vengeance. And occasionally they do pop up on the trading post, but usually at a premium price, so yeah, maybe not worth breaking the bank on that one. Going into the stats side of things for PvE light armor healing, if you have something like Corrupted Ward and you're in a corrupted dungeon, I would recommend going for 150 Constitution and then as much focus as you can get. This is without a food buff, by the way, so we could get another 30 to 40 focus or Constitution by eating some food. But if you don't have that Corrupted or Ancient or Angry Earth Ward, you're going to find yourself a bit more susceptible to damage, so in which case I would recommend going for 200 Constitution, and then again using some stat food to boost your focus up to 300, or as big the number as you can get before you go in and do those expeditions or mutated expeditions. Finally, the last thing to talk about in this video is gem choice, and these gems apply to both PvE and PvP generally. I use diamonds in most of my armor as it provides a good catch-all. We have physical damage absorption for the great axes and for the swords and for the muskets and the bows. You know, a lot of physical damage in the game are going to be things that are a big threat to us, especially in PvE, but also in PvP. And then elemental damage, just in case we find ourselves caught in an ice storm or we get hit by one of the boss's magical attacks and stuff like that. A little bit of something special that I have here with the helmet and light glows, and this is more for the PvE side of things, but it can also work in PvP as well, is thrust damage absorption gems. One of your bigger threats in PvE is the tank losing aggro of archers and them shooting at you. Both arrows and bullets from muskets and blunderbusses do thrust damage, so getting just a cheeky 10% thrust damage absorption from 2 gems gems, I find actually does make me pretty survivable in those situations where the tank loses aggro. And again, it does have some fringe usage in PvP, as if you find yourself getting shot at by bows or muskets, it's going to make you much harder for them to take you out. Finally, when it comes to weapon gem choice, we have diamonds in all of our healing weapons. So if the weapon can do some healing, we put a diamond in it, as the diamond means that we get extra outgoing healing as long as you're at full health. And for any off weapons that don't really do healing and are there for utility, you can put an amber gem in them just to give them a little bit more damage, allow them to scale off of your focus. If you want the explanation as to why we're using a low tier amber gem in these weapons as opposed to a high tier amber gem, that is a video for a different occasion, but I will put a link in the description down below explaining why tier 2 gems are often better than tier 5 gems for elemental damage conversion. Alright, I feel like I've been talking at you guys for a while now. I didn't want this video to go for too long, so if you did enjoy this one, please make sure you go ahead and click the like button, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys all in the next one for the heavy armor healing build.